Friends, thank you for being here today. What if I told you that the foundational promise of American life, that hard work and a good education guarantee a stable career, is fundamentally broken? And what if I told you this isn't just a temporary downturn, but a systemic dismantling of the very ladder you were told to climb? This isn't speculation, it's the reality for an entire generation. The American dream was long built on that simple foundational promise: work hard, get an education, and you will secure a stable, upwardly mobile career. But that compact, which defined the aspirations of generations, has shattered. Today, a new and troubling reality has taken root, defined by a jarring contradiction: a labor market overflowing with advertised job vacancies, while a generation of highly educated, qualified, and ambitious graduates remains stubbornly unemployed. This is not a cyclical downturn. It is a systemic dismantling of the career ladder, a crisis born from a toxic cocktail of deceptive corporate practices, dehumanizing technology, profound economic uncertainty, and impossible expectations. The result is an entire generation, Gen Z, left overqualified, underpaid, and locked out of the very opportunities they were told their efforts would guarantee. So let's start by looking at the central paradox of this whole situation: this bizarre disconnect between widespread unemployment and all the help wanted signs we supposedly see. The most potent symbol of this crisis comes not from the margins, but from the very pinnacle of American meritocracy, the Ivy League. When 23% of Harvard MBA students graduates from an institution synonymous with unparalleled access and opportunity are jobless 3 months after graduation, the foundational assumptions of the labor market are called into question. These are not individuals lacking credentials. They are the supposed golden ticket holders, yet they report being unemployed for over a year, stuck in a bewildering state of professional limbo. If the most privileged graduates from Wharton, Stanford, and Harvard are struggling, it signals a profound sickness in the market that affects everyone else with far greater severity. This sickness is most acute for Generation Z. They are stepping off the graduation stage into what is unequivocally the worst job market in decades. Recent data paints a grim picture, with unemployment rates for recent graduates fluctuating between a worrying 5% and a disastrous 8.6%. This figure stands in stark contrast to the general national average, which hovers around 4.2%. This inversion is a rare and ominous historical reversal. For decades, new graduate unemployment has typically tracked below the general rate as fresh talent was absorbed into an expanding economy. Today, the opposite is true, leaving young people disproportionately disadvantaged. This reality is forcing graduates to confront a deep sense of personal failure as they internalize systemic problems as individual flaws. They speak of feeling unqualified, perpetually discouraged, and deeply pessimistic about their future after submitting dozens, sometimes hundreds, of applications only to be met with a deafening automated silence. This psychological toll is immense, yet their experience runs directly counter to the dominant corporate narrative. The ultimate paradox lies in the employer's contradiction. By many metrics, companies should be on a hiring spree. The number of job vacancies has been reported as the second highest rate in 2 decades, with some analyses suggesting the number of job openings has more than doubled in recent years. Executives and hiring managers publicly lament a skills gap and a talent shortage, claiming they are struggling to fill open roles. Yet, this high demand narrative is impossible to reconcile with the lived experience of graduates who cannot secure so much as a single interview, let alone a job offer. This chasm between the jobs that are advertised and the jobs that are attainable reveals that the system itself is fundamentally broken, deceptive, and no longer functioning as a straightforward market of supply and demand. Now, a huge driver of this disconnect is what we have to call the impossible barrier, this new twisted definition of an entry level job and the experience paradox that comes with it. A primary driver of this disconnect is the catastrophic devaluation of the very credential society mandated for success, the college degree. For previous generations, a bachelor's degree was a reliable pathway to a middle class career. Today, it has been relegated to the status of a bare minimum ticket to entry, and a costly one at that. While approximately 70% of job listings now demand one, the degree itself offers no guarantee of employment. It merely grants permission to compete. This has created a new class of underemployed graduates, with a staggering 60% reporting that they are working in jobs that do not require their college education. They are baristas with biology degrees, rideshare drivers with finance degrees, trapped in survival jobs to service the very student debt they acquired to avoid such a fate. This disillusionment is palpable, leading to a nearly 5% drop in college enrollment since 2020, as prospective students rightfully question the return on a debilitating financial investment. For those who do graduate and attempt to enter their chosen field, they immediately collide with the entry-level fallacy. This is the cruelest bait and switch in the modern labor market, where the very term entry level has been stripped of its meaning. These roles, ostensibly designed for those entering the workforce, now come with prerequisites that make them inaccessible to their target audience. This creates a vicious and inescapable cycle. Graduates need experience to get a job, but they need a job to gain experience. The data on this trend is damning. A comprehensive analysis of LinkedIn postings found that nearly 40% of jobs advertised as entry level required 3 to 5 years of prior experience. Other data corroborates this, showing 40% require at least 2 years and 22% demand 3 years or more. This is not a clerical error. It is a deliberate filtering mechanism. In the last 5 years alone, the number of discrete skills required on job listings has ballooned by 20%. Employers are no longer hiring for potential and a willingness to learn. They are demanding fully formed, plug-and-play employees at entry-level salaries. This impossible standard leaves only one theoretical escape route: the internship. But this path, too, has become a bottleneck of intense, often exploitative competition. The internship is no longer a simple summer learning experience. It is a high-stakes audition for a career, and the odds are brutal. A company like Citadel, for example, reported receiving 69,000 applications for just 300 available internship spots. Furthermore, these opportunities themselves are vanishing, with the total number of available internships falling by 12% between 2022 and 2024. Even if a student manages to secure one of these coveted spots, the system introduces another insidious filter: economic stratification. In 2022, a full 47% of all internships were unpaid. This practice effectively erects a class barrier, limiting these critical career starting opportunities to only those students from wealthy families who can afford to work for free for months on end. This isn't just unfair, it's demonstrably damaging. Recruiters and hiring systems, it turns out, value unpaid labor far less than paid work. Subsequent studies show a clear disparity in outcomes. Graduates who completed paid internships averaged 1.4 job offers, while those who completed unpaid internships averaged less than one at 0.88. The unpaid trap forces students to sacrifice their time and labor for an opportunity that, in the eyes of their next potential employer, barely registers as credible experience, leaving them right back where they started. So, let's say you manage to navigate that impossible experience paradox. Now you face an even bigger problem, a broken, deceptive system that's actively working against you. We're talking about automated gatekeepers and practices that are frankly just lies. The first line of defense is the applicant tracking system, or ATS. This is the algorithmic wall that stands between a candidate and a human hiring manager. Today, nearly every major company uses this software to manage the high volume of online applications. In theory, it streamlines the process. In practice, it has become a ruthless automated executioner of resumes. The ATS does not read a resume for nuance, potential, or transferable skills. It scans for precise keywords and formatting, ranking CVs like a search engine ranks web pages. If a candidate's resume, meticulously crafted, uses the term project management instead of the exact phrase managed projects used in the job description, they are instantly relegated to the bottom of the digital pile. If they're formatting a non standard font, a column, a graphic confuses the parser, they are discarded. Highly qualified, creative, and capable candidates are systematically filtered out by a blunt force algorithm before a human being ever lays eyes on their application, all because they failed to guess the magic words. Worse than being rejected by a machine, however, is the realization that the job itself may not even exist. The American labor market is flooded with ghost jobs listings that companies post with no actual immediate intent to fill. This is not a fringe issue. Credible estimates range widely and terrifyingly, suggesting that anywhere from 1 in 4 to a shocking 1 in 2 of all U.S. job postings are fake or inactive. These listings poison the well, wasting millions of cumulative applicant hours and creating a false sense of opportunity that further demoralizes job seekers. These are not harmless clerical errors. Companies post these phantom jobs for a variety of cynical and strategic reasons. The first is to project an image of growth and stability to investors and competitors, making the company appear vibrant and expanding even when it is stagnant. The second is to placate a burned out, overworked existing staff, creating the illusion that relief is coming in the form of new hires, thereby discouraging internal complaints or resignations. A third motive is to build a talent pool, a cost free way to harvest thousands of resumes just in case a need arises in the future. Finally, some listings are posted merely to appear fair and fulfill internal or legal HR requirements, even when an internal candidate has already been pre selected for the role. This practice has become so widespread that it is being analyzed as an emerging labor crisis. Yet there is currently no federal regulation targeting this systemic and deceptive practice. This atmosphere of deception has also fostered a more malignant threat. the explosion of sophisticated employment fraud. As graduates grow more desperate, they become more vulnerable. Scammers preying on this desperation have escalated their efforts. As a result, reported losses from job scams have skyrocketed, growing from $90 million in 2020 to a staggering $500 million in 2024. Applicants are now forced to navigate a minefield where they must distinguish between a real job, a fake ghost job, and a malicious scam designed to steal their money and identity. When you really look at it, what's at the heart of this entire systemic breakdown? It's a profound cultural shift. The entire process of hiring has been fundamentally dehumanized, transformed from a human relationship into a cold, metrics driven data problem. This is the core of the disconnect between the boomer era advice graduates receive and the reality they face. In the past, when labor was scarcer and applications were submitted in person, hiring was a human scale activity. A manager might hire based on a firm handshake, a sense of gut feeling, or a perception of raw potential persistence, such as just showing up and asking for the manager could genuinely work. Today, that world is gone. The internet and one click apply buttons have created a massive oversupply of labor for every open role, visible to thousands of applicants instantly. This has shifted all power to the employers. They are no longer fighting for talent. A deluge of candidates is fighting for their attention. This dynamic has created a numbers game that no one can win, least of all the applicant. In response to this deluge, companies have erected a gauntlet of automated, impersonal hurdles designed to filter the masses, not to find the best individual. The human connection is gone, replaced by endless online questionnaires, one way video interviews, and abstract personality assessments. These tools, which purport to measure critical thinking or cultural fit, are often just thinly veiled compliance tests. They filter for conformity and for system gamers candidates who are good at guessing what the algorithm wants to hear while filtering out individuality, creativity, and neurodiversity. The entire process has become agonizingly long and opaque. The average time to receive a response, any response, for an entry level job has more than doubled, stretching from 21 days in 2015 to 45 days in 2025. Candidates who make it past the initial algorithmic cull are then dragged through grueling multi-stage interview gauntlets. A one-way video submission might be, as one graduate described, just stage one of seven, followed by multiple panel interviews, technical tests, and speculative unpaid projects, all before a decision is made. This protracted process treats candidates as expendable commodities, demanding hours of free labor and emotional energy with no guarantee of employment. Even the final backstop of human connection, the reference check, has been rendered meaningless. Fearing lawsuits, most companies now have policies to provide nothing more than a confirmation of title and dates of employment, refusing to give the honest, positive feedback that could set a great candidate apart. The entire machine is designed to mitigate corporate risk, not to find the best person for the job. Now, you have to understand this broken, dehumanized hiring system isn't happening in a vacuum. It's colliding head on with a macroeconomic landscape that's defined by intense fear and uncertainty. And this explains why so many companies simply stopped hiring. This has created what economists call a low hiring, low firing environment. Traumatized by recent economic volatility An estimated 70% of companies have chosen to freeze or slow walk new hiring. Their priority is no longer expansion, it is stability and the retention of their current proven employees. In this climate of uncertainty, young, unproven workers are viewed as a high risk investment, and investments are the first line item to be cut from the budget. Companies are simply unwilling to gamble on potential. This has slowed hiring to its weakest pace in years. Simultaneously, job cuts are up nearly 50% year over year as companies right size and trim what they perceive as fat. The ladder is being pulled up and the gates are being locked. This corporate caution is being fueled by a trio of specific economic pressures. First, the cumulative effects of high inflation, which peaked at a 4 decade high of 9.1% in 2022 and still hovers at 3.2%, have forced widespread budget cuts. Second, the subsequent interest rate hikes used to combat inflation have slowed overall economic conditions, dramatically reducing the corporate appetite for expansion and hiring. Finally, uncertainty in global trade policy, particularly tariffs related to the US and China, has hurt profitability and tangled supply chains. This makes small and medium sized businesses, the traditional engine of job growth, exceptionally reluctant to take on new payroll costs. This environment has accelerated another toxic trend, the death of internal mobility. The post war American corporation, for all its flaws, often invested in its people, training entry level workers and promoting them from within. That model is dead. Today, only about 25% of vacancies are filled by internal candidates, marking a steep decline over the last 50 years. Companies have overwhelmingly shifted to outside hiring, preferring to poach already experienced employees from competitors rather than invest in training their own. This creates a closed loop where the only people who can get jobs are people who already have jobs, leaving new graduates with no way in. This problem is exacerbated by a near total failure of public policy. The United States government spends less than 0.1% of its GDP on active labor market programs such as job training, employment incentives, and public hiring initiatives, a fraction of what most other developed nations invest to bridge this exact gap. As if these barriers were not high enough, two powerful new forces are accelerating the crisis, threatening to eliminate the remaining footholds for the next generation: artificial intelligence and global labor competition. Artificial intelligence is no longer a distant sci fi concept. It is an active agent in the labor market, and its primary target is the entry level formative role. AI is rapidly automating the exact tasks that were once the training ground for junior employees. In the tech sector, some companies are already skipping junior developer roles entirely, hiring only mid level talent while AI handles the basic coding and debugging tasks. This is the new experience paradox on steroids. AI is eating the first rung of the ladder, making it impossible for graduates to get the very experience they need to advance beyond the level of AI. The scale of this threat is massive. Goldman Sachs predicted in 2023 that AI could disrupt or displace up to 300 million jobs worldwide. For Gen Z, this means they are competing not only with each other and with ghost jobs, but with a machine that is infinitely cheaper, faster, and available 24/7. The second threat comes from a complex and contentious global labor policy, crystallized in the H-1B visa program. What was originally designed as a narrow pathway to bring highly specialized elite foreign talent to fill genuine skill gaps has, according to critics, transformed into a systemic loophole. Companies have discovered they can use the program to fill entry level tech and white collar positions with imported labor, often willing to work for less, directly displacing recent American graduates. A recent controversial policy proposal aims to curb this by levying a new six-figure fee, perhaps $100,000, on every new H-1B application. This presents a dangerous fork in the road. The positive potential is that this high cost could force companies to finally abandon the easy H-1B pipeline and invest in the vast, overlooked pool of domestic talent, training and hiring American graduates for competitive wages. But there is a far darker possibility. If bringing talent to the U.S. becomes prohibitively expensive, companies may not hire domestically. They may simply move the entire departments overseas. The same offshoring trend that gutted American manufacturing towns could now come for white collar jobs. Instead of H-1B workers coming to America, the jobs themselves could disappear to India, Eastern Europe, or Latin America, anywhere. Labor is cheaper and immigration policies are irrelevant. For the American graduate, the result is the same. One form of displacement is simply replaced by another, and the career they trained for vanishes. But this brings us to a deeper, more fundamental question. Why did this all happen? Why did corporations, which are ostensibly rational actors, collectively decide to abandon the proven post-war model of investing in their own people? Why did they create this automated, high-friction system that, as we've noted, often filters out the very talent they claim to need? The answer isn't just technology. It's a profound philosophical shift in the very purpose of a corporation. Beginning in the 1980s, a new doctrine took hold: shareholder primacy. This idea, which states that a company's only social responsibility is to maximize profit for its shareholders, replaced the older stakeholder model that balanced the needs of employees, customers, and the community. This shift was catastrophic for the new American worker. When the only metric that matters is the next quarterly earnings report, any long-term investment becomes a liability. And training an entry-level employee is a long-term investment. In this new paradigm, employees were no longer seen as assets to be developed. They became human capital, a line item on a spreadsheet, a cost to be minimized. Training programs, apprenticeships, and mentorships were the first things to be cut during any downturn. Why? Because their return on investment is not immediate. It doesn't show up on this quarter's balance sheet. It is far cheaper in the short term to poach a pre-trained employee from a competitor, one who already has the 3 to 5 years of experience, than to spend 2 years training a recent graduate. This created a corporate tragedy of the commons. When every company decides it's cheaper to buy talent than to build it, eventually no one is building talent. The entire ecosystem begins to starve. The skills gap that executives lament is a crisis of their own creation. They have collectively forgotten how to make the skills they need. The automated ATS, the impossible experience requirements, and the ghost job postings are not bugs in the system. They are the logical features of a system obsessed with short-term financialization. A ghost job costs nothing. An ATS provides legal cover and cuts HR costs. Demanding 5 years of experience outsources the cost of training to someone else. Generation Z is simply the first generation to come of age in a market that is no longer designed to onboard them. They are being judged by a system that sees them as a risk, not an opportunity, a 1 year cost before they become a 1 year profit. In a culture of extreme risk aversion and quarterly driven panic, that's a bet fewer and fewer companies are willing to make. So, where does this all lead? The cumulative impact of these forces is not a temporary setback. It is the creation of an economically scarred generation with long term consequences that will reverberate for decades. The immediate financial distress is acute. The average starting salary for a recent graduate, around $59,000, is functionally stagnant, rising only 2% in the last year, a figure that is effectively a pay cut when measured against the cumulative cost of housing, food, and transportation. This financial pressure is amplified by the crushing burden of student debt, which averages $33,000 per borrower and for which payments have now resumed. This combination of debt, underemployment, and wage stagnation is the classic recipe for economic scarring. This academic term describes the lasting negative effect on those who enter the labor market during a crisis. We have seen this before. Graduates who entered the market during the 2008 recession saw their earnings reduced by as much as 9% for more than a decade after the crisis had passed. A similar, if not worse, phenomenon threatens to repeat itself. The financial strain is forcing a catastrophic delay in life milestones. A recent survey found that 68% of Generation Z youth believe they will not achieve financial independence from their parents until after age 28 or 30. With a late start on stable, career track earnings, saving for a home or starting a family becomes a distant fantasy. Nearly half of all Gen Z workers already believe they will not be able to retire at a traditional age. The psychological toll is just as severe. The entire process, the impossible expectations, the algorithmic rejections, the ghost job deceptions, is profoundly demoralizing. It leads to severe burnout before a career has even begun. It is no surprise that 46% of Gen Z workers report feeling unmotivated or pessimistic about their professional future. They have followed all the rules, only to find the game is rigged. Their anxiety is evident, with 60% believing they will have to string together multiple precarious, temporary, or gig economy jobs before ever accessing a stable position. This is the great unspoken tragedy of the modern job market. The system is broken. It is failing an entire generation of bright, motivated, and highly educated young people. But it is also failing the very companies that designed it by replacing human judgment with flawed algorithms, by prioritizing short term cost cutting over long term investment in talent, and by creating an adversarial, dehumanized process. These corporations are systematically filtering out the creative, diverse, and brilliant individuals they claim they so desperately need. They have optimized their hiring process into oblivion, and in doing so, have broken the most fundamental promise of a functioning society.